If you feel like the truth is being kept from us, know that you're not alone. I'm Detective Ozma, and my mission is to dig up the evidence behind the mysteries they want to bury. Today, I'm opening a case that begins in broad daylight, in full view of an entire town, and yet somehow dissolves into something no one could properly examine. On October 17, 1952, residents of Oloron-Sainte-Marie in southern France looked up during an ordinary afternoon and saw what they would later describe as a structured formation moving across the sky. At the center was a long, luminous object, tilted and releasing a pale vapor. Around it moved dozens of smaller objects, traveling in pairs, shifting direction in abrupt, angular patterns. And then, after the formation passed overhead, something began to descend. Not smoke. Not ash. Not aircraft debris. But fine white filaments that drifted through the air and settled across rooftops, trees, and streets, only to vanish when touched. What makes this case unusual is not just what was seen, but what physically fell from the sky, and disappeared before it could be fully tested. When I opened the file, the timeline revealed a pattern that would divide scientists and ufologists for decades. Evidence 1, the cigar and the formation. At approximately 1:30 p.m., multiple residents of Oloron-Sainte-Marie reported seeing a large cylindrical object in the sky. According to witness Yves Prigent, a school supervisor who observed the phenomenon through binoculars, the object resembled a luminous cigar tilted at roughly 45 degrees, emitting a whitish vapor. In front of this elongated object, he described around 30 smaller disc-shaped objects moving in pairs. Through magnification, he later stated they appeared as reddish spheres surrounded by yellowish halos. Rather than traveling in a straight line, the smaller objects reportedly zigzagged rapidly. Several witnesses claimed that when two of these objects separated, a white filament-like trail appeared between them, resembling an electric arc. These descriptions come entirely from eyewitness testimony. No photographs or official radar confirmations were documented. Evidence 2, the fall of the filaments. Shortly after the aerial formation passed overhead, residents reported that a white, fibrous substance began drifting down over the town. Witnesses described it as silky, sticky, and similar to spider webs or cotton strands floating gently through the air. According to multiple accounts, the material collected on rooftops, trees, telephone wires, and streets. Some individuals attempted to gather the strands. They later reported that when rolled between the fingers, the material transformed into a gelatinous mass and then evaporated, leaving no residue. One resident claimed that the filaments covered him while he was crossing a bridge and that, after cutting them away, the strands seemed to regroup and ascend back upward. This detail comes solely from personal testimony and was not independently verified. The material became known in later discussions as angel hair. Evidence 3, the failed analysis. In the hours and days following the incident, local authorities collected statements from witnesses. Attempts were made to preserve samples of the filaments for laboratory analysis. However, according to reports from those involved, the substance disintegrated before proper testing could occur. A physical education teacher who collected strands reportedly found that they melted inside his wallet before reaching officials. Because no stable samples survived, no chemical composition was ever conclusively established. This absence of physical evidence would later become central to both skeptical and speculative interpretations. Evidence 4, media attention and official response. The incident quickly gained regional and national media coverage. Newspapers reported the event seriously, and at least one national magazine suggested that official services were treating the case with attention. Despite this, no formal government report publicly classified the event as an unidentified aerial phenomenon of unknown origin. Instead, attention shifted toward possible natural explanations. There was no military confirmation of foreign aircraft, no declaration of airspace violation, and no official acknowledgement of extraordinary craft. Evidence 5, the recurrence in Gale Lac and Oloron. 10 days after the initial incident, on October 27, 1952, a nearly identical phenomenon was reported in Gale Lac, another town in southern France. Witnesses there described a large elongated object accompanied by smaller luminous forms, followed by the fall of white filaments similar to those seen in Oloron. Then, on October 28, Oloron itself experienced a second episode. Residents once again reported multicolored spherical objects moving through the sky, seemingly connected by visible threads. Shortly afterward, white filaments descended in noticeable quantities, some described as thicker than typical spider silk. These repeated occurrences, in 2 different towns and on consecutive days, suggested a pattern rather than a single isolated event. Whether natural or anomalous, the phenomenon demonstrated consistency in structure, timing, and physical aftermath. As I review the file, 2 main interpretations emerge. The first is naturalistic. A local physician, identified in records as Dr. G, proposed that the phenomenon was caused by a mass migration of spiders releasing silk threads into the atmosphere, a process known as ballooning. Under certain atmospheric conditions, dense concentrations of silk could reflect sunlight and appear structured from a distance. The falling filaments would then be biological in origin. The second interpretation accepts that migrating spiders may explain the falling filaments, but argues that this does not necessarily resolve the entire event. Supporters of this view point out that multiple witnesses independently described a structured aerial formation, a large elongated object accompanied by smaller luminous bodies moving in coordinated pairs, executing abrupt directional changes and maintaining relative positioning. According to these accounts, the objects did not simply drift with the wind. They appeared to maneuver, accelerating, zigzagging, and maintaining formation before the filaments began to descend. In this interpretation, the falling material may have been a secondary phenomenon, but not the source of the structured shapes observed above. Without preserved samples, radar records, or detailed atmospheric data from that afternoon, certain aspects of the visual phenomenon remain unresolved. In the end, the sky above Oloron left behind threads and questions. I'm Detective Ozma, and I'll keep gathering every fragment, every voice, every piece of evidence they try to erase. Many stories get buried, but never forever. If you, or someone you know, has ever witnessed something unexplainable, leave your story in the comments. Or, if you'd rather stay anonymous, send it to the email pinned in the comments. Who knows, maybe the next file I open will be yours.